Ibrahim Traoré has once again captured the world's attention with his bold and uncompromising stance, shaking up the international stage and inspiring many across Africa. This time, his words and actions have reached as far as Kenya, where police officers, fed up with decades of mismanagement, exploitation, and broken promises, have declared, "Enough." For years, African law enforcement has been stuck in a difficult position, caught between serving their communities and being used as tools by corrupt elites. In Kenya, officers have long complained of poor pay, lack of equipment, and dangerous working conditions while being ordered to suppress the very people they swore to protect. Frustration has been building silently, but Traoré's example of standing firm against injustice seems to have lit a spark. Just last year, Traoré stunned the world by removing French forces from Burkina Faso and demanding that his country's resources benefit its people, not foreign corporations. His courage inspired millions across the continent, reminding Africans of their power to resist external control and reclaim sovereignty. That message hasn't stopped at Burkina Faso's borders. This week in Nairobi, a surprising statement emerged from a group of uniformed officers who staged a symbolic walkout, holding placards with messages like, "Our service is not slavery," and "We deserve dignity too." When journalists asked them what had inspired this sudden act of defiance, one of the officers boldly said, "If Traoré can tell them no, so can we. Enough is enough." The Kenyan officers are protesting not just their working conditions, but a much deeper issue, the way African institutions have been weakened by foreign influence and domestic corruption working hand in hand. Many of them pointed to the harsh crackdowns they've been ordered to carry out against peaceful protesters, while their own families live in poverty. They said it's time to end the cycle of oppression. The ripple effect of Traoré's leadership is clear. What was once considered unthinkable, for African security forces to publicly oppose their orders, is now happening. And it's not just the police. Reports from other countries suggest that military and police personnel in Mali, Niger, and even Senegal have been quietly discussing similar grievances. Emboldened by what they see in Burkina Faso. What makes this moment so significant is that it highlights the growing unity and awareness spreading through Africa. It's no longer just civilians protesting or intellectuals writing essays. Even those inside the system are beginning to speak up. Traoré himself hasn't directly commented on the developments in Kenya yet, but many believe his speeches about dignity, sovereignty, and justice have contributed to this awakening. His simple yet powerful message resonates. African lives, including those of the men and women who wear the uniform, have value, and it's time they stop being used as pawns. Analysts say this could mark the beginning of a wider movement. If security forces across Africa continue to rise up and refuse to carry out unjust orders, the balance of power could shift dramatically. Governments and foreign backers that rely on suppression and fear may find their methods no longer effective. But challenges remain. Already, Kenyan authorities have condemned the actions of the officers, threatening disciplinary measures. However, support from the public appears to be growing. Videos of the protesting officers have gone viral on social media with hashtags like #KenyaEnough and #TraoreEffect trending across the continent. People are watching closely to see how this unfolds. Will the Kenyan government listen to the demands? Or will it double down on repression? Either way, one thing is clear. The winds of change are blowing through Africa, and Ibrahim Traoré's example has sparked a fire that is proving difficult to extinguish. As more Africans, civilians and security forces alike, find their voices and say, "Enough." The old order is being challenged like never before. And the world is watching, shocked yet again, as a young African leader continues to inspire a continent to stand tall. Ibrahim Traoré's bold leadership has not only inspired Kenya's police to rise up, it has also emboldened voices in unexpected places. Just days after the dramatic events in Nairobi, a surprising story emerged from Ghana, where a group of young parliamentarians stunned the nation by walking out of a session in protest of what they called foreign dictates over domestic policies. The walkout happened during a heated debate over a proposed mining contract with a European company that many critics argued would strip Ghana of its resources while offering little benefit to ordinary citizens. As the majority in Parliament pushed to approve the deal, a group of about 15 lawmakers, all under the age of 40, stood up one by one and left the chamber. In a press conference shortly after, the spokesperson delivered a fiery statement. "We refuse to be rubber stamps for neocolonialism. If Captain Ibrahim Traoré can demand sovereignty and self-respect for his people, so can we." Their act shocked many in Ghana, where political business often proceeds along rigid party lines. But this new generation of leaders says they've had enough of seeing their country's gold, oil and bauxite enriching foreign investors while ordinary Ghanaians struggle to afford food and electricity. This incident is yet another sign that Traoré's vision is resonating across Africa, not just with the military or police, but also with politicians and civil society. These Ghanaian MPs even adopted the hashtag Traore generation on social media, signaling their alignment with the Pan-African ideals he embodies. The walkout quickly became a trending topic in Ghana and beyond, sparking debates on radio, television, and social platforms. Supporters called it a brave stand for national dignity, while critics accused them of grandstanding and destabilizing the economy. Yet polls conducted just 2 days later showed a surge in public support for their stance, especially among young people under 30. Political analysts point out that this is part of a broader awakening. As more African nations watch Burkina Faso reclaim control of its own future, citizens and leaders alike are feeling empowered to demand better deals, fairer governance, and respect for their sovereignty. The Ghanaian MPs have vowed to keep fighting against the mining deal and are calling on citizens to pressure the government to renegotiate or scrap it altogether. Meanwhile, similar sentiments have reportedly been expressed in Senegal and Côte d'Ivoire, where younger legislators are also questioning long-standing contracts with European and American corporations. Traoré himself, while not directly involved, has clearly become a symbol of what is possible when Africans refuse to accept the status quo. His vision of an Africa that stands tall, speaks with one voice, and prioritizes its people over foreign interests seems to be catching on. From the police stations of Nairobi to the parliament chambers of Accra, this story of Ghana's young lawmakers is more than just another headline. It reflects a growing determination across Africa to chart a new course, one led not by fear of reprisal from powerful outsiders, but by faith in the continent's own strength and unity. And as more stories like this emerge, one thing becomes clear. Traoré's shockwaves are only just beginning to reshape Africa's political landscape. The question now is, who will be next to stand up and say, enough? Just as the dust was settling in Kenya and Ghana, another remarkable story broke, this time from the heart of southern Africa. In Zambia, thousands of farmers took to the streets of Lusaka, staging one of the largest rural-led demonstrations the country has seen in decades. Their demand was simple yet powerful: stop selling our land to foreign corporations. The protest was sparked by a controversial deal between the Zambian government and a Chinese agribusiness conglomerate, which was granted a 99-year lease over tens of thousands of hectares of fertile farmland. Local farmers feared displacement and the destruction of their way of life. For years, rural communities in Zambia and elsewhere have quietly endured as governments signed away land to foreign investors in exchange for quick cash, often leaving locals with little compensation or support. But this time, inspired by what they described as Traore's courage, the farmers decided to resist. One elder from the southern province, speaking to reporters during the protest, said, "We have been quiet for too long. But we watched." What the young man in Burkina Faso did, he stood for his people. He said no to outsiders. We can too. The protests quickly spread beyond Lusaka to smaller towns and villages. Farmers, their families, and even some local chiefs joined in, blocking roads with tractors and waving handmade banners reading, "Our land, our future, and Zambia belongs to Zambians." What made this moment even more striking was the unexpected support the farmers received from students and urban workers. University students in Lusaka organized a solidarity march chanting, "If Traore can do it, so can we." Videos of these chants went viral on social media, adding fuel to the movement. Facing mounting pressure. The Zambian government announced that it would review the land deal, though many suspect this is only a tactic to buy time. Still, the farmers have vowed to continue their protests until the lease is canceled outright. Experts say this is just another example of how Traore's actions in Burkina Faso have inspired Africans far beyond his own borders. The message is clear. Whether it's soldiers refusing to oppress their own people, lawmakers rejecting exploitative contracts, or farmers defending their ancestral lands, more and more Africans are finding the courage to stand up and say, enough. Even. In Zambia's national parliament, one MP commented during a heated debate, "The people are watching. They see what Traore has done. If we do not listen, they will rise." As the protests continue, there's growing discussion across Africa about whether the continent is witnessing the birth of a true grassroots sovereignty movement, a wave of self-determination that cuts across class, profession, and even country. What began as one young captain defying global powers in Ouagadougou has now become something much bigger. In the fields of Zambia, farmers are standing their ground. And in the chants of their supporters, one name keeps echoing. Traore or EAQ. The world watches as yet another chapter in Africa's awakening unfolds, proving once again that the spirit of dignity and resistance is alive and spreading. The wave of defiance sweeping across. Africa didn't stop in Zambia. Just days later, headlines emerged from Nigeria, where a powerful coalition of teachers and healthcare workers launched a nationwide strike, demanding better pay, better working conditions, and more strikingly, an end to what they called foreign economic slavery. In Lagos, Abuja, and Kano, tens of thousands of teachers marched through the streets, wearing green armbands and chanting slogans inspired by Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Placards bore messages like "Our children deserve better," "Our lives are not cheap," and "Traoré showed us the way." For decades, Nigerian public servants have endured poor salaries, delayed payments, and crumbling infrastructure in schools and hospitals, while watching billions of dollars flow out of the country through foreign oil contracts, debt repayments, and corruption. This time, they decided to take a stand. A young teacher in Abuja, tears in his eyes, told reporters, "I used to think we were powerless. But then we saw what Traore did in Burkina Faso. He told them no. He put his people first. If he can do it, why can't we?" What made this strike different from previous protests was its scope and unity. Teachers and doctors joined hands with nurses, janitors, and even private school employees. Parents lined the streets in support, bringing food and water to the piers. Demonstrators. In some cities, university students also walked out of classes to show solidarity. Asterisk. The unions leading the strike issued a powerful statement. Asterisk. We are not only striking for higher wages. We are striking for our dignity. For too long, this country has served foreign interests while neglecting its own people. Burkina Faso reminded us that Africa can choose another path. Nigeria must choose that path now. Asterisk. The strike sent shockwaves through Nigeria's political establishment. Government officials scrambled to negotiate and warned that prolonged strikes could damage the economy. But public sentiment seemed firmly behind the workers. Asterisk. Even in the Nigerian Senate, a fiery debate erupted, with one senator thundering, "If Burkina Faso can tell the IMF and the French to take their hands off, why are we still kneeling? Why do we keep punishing our own people to please outsiders?" Asterisk. Across social media, hashtags like hashtag #TRAORE effect and hashtag Nigeria Awake trended for days. Artists and musicians released protest songs celebrating the courage of the striking workers and calling for a fairer system. Asterisk. Analysts say this could mark the beginning of a broader reckoning in Nigeria, which, despite its vast resources and educated workforce, remains plagued by poverty and inequality. Asterisk. Ibrahim Traoré has yet to comment directly on the events in Nigeria. But many say he doesn't have to. His actions have already spoken volumes, inspiring everyday Africans to believe in their right to a better life. Asterisk. What began as a lone stand in Burkina Faso is now a continent-wide movement in Nigeria's classrooms and hospitals, just as in Kenya's police stations, Ghana's parliament, and Zambia's farmlands. The message is the same. Africa has had enough. Asterisk. And as the chants echo through the streets, Traore showed us the way. One thing is clear. This story is far from over. The African awakening is only gaining strength. Asterisk. The fire of resistance sparked by Ibrahim Traoré's bold example has now reached Tunisia, where an unprecedented movement of fishermen and port workers has shaken the government and sent a message to international shipping companies exploiting North Africa's coastline. Asterisk. For decades, Tunisia's fishing communities have struggled under dwindling catches, pollution, and restrictive deals that allow large European trawlers to operate in Tunisian waters, often leaving local fishermen with barely enough to survive. Meanwhile, multinational shipping firms have enjoyed tax breaks and sweetheart contracts at the country's major ports, while Tunisian dock workers endure low wages and unsafe working conditions. Asterisk. But this month, in the bustling port city of Sfax, thousands of fishermen and dock workers united in protest under a single banner: "Our seas, our jobs, our dignity." Asterisk. At dawn, hundreds of small fishing boats staged a dramatic blockade at the harbor, forming a wall across the port entrance to prevent foreign trawlers from departing. On land, dock workers' chains shut the gates to warehouses and refused to load or unload any vessels tied to foreign corporations. Asterisk. One fisherman, who has worked the Mediterranean for 30 years, told reporters, "We've been robbed for decades." And nobody spoke up. But then we saw Captain Traore on TV. He stood up to the French. He stood up for his people. He reminded us that we don't have to accept this anymore. Asterisk. Their demands included an end to exploitative fishing licenses for foreign fleets, fair wages and benefits for port workers, and government investment in sustainable fishing for local communities. Asterisk. The protests quickly spread to other port cities, like Bizerte and Gabs, with fishermen and workers there joining the call for sovereignty over Tunisia's resources. Even markets in Tunis erupted in solidarity marches, with people carrying signs reading, "Traore's courage lives in us." In Parliament, the government scrambled to contain the situation. A spokesperson announced the creation of a task force to review all maritime agreements and meet with union leaders. But the unions were clear. They would not end the blockade until concrete actions were taken. What stunned observers was not only the scale of the protest, but also the level of coordination. Dock workers, fishermen, students, and even retired naval officers were seen working side by side, saying that Traore's story gave them the confidence to stand united. Analysts say Tunisia's protest highlights a growing shift in African consciousness, a belief that the continent's seas, lands, and skies belong first and foremost to its people. Just like Burkina Faso reclaimed its gold mines and its dignity, Tunisia's fishing communities want the same for their waters. Social media erupted with videos and photos of the harbor blockade, shared with hashtags like #Sea of Dignity and #Traore Effect North Africa. In one clip that went viral, a group of young fishermen stood on a pier waving Tunisian flags and chanting, "Traore showed Africa the way, now we take back our seas." And so, in Tunisia's ports and along its shimmering coastline, another chapter in Africa's awakening is being written. Proof that the spirit of resistance and hope, unleashed by one young captain in Burkina Faso, knows no borders. As the boats bob in the harbor and the chants echo across the water, one thing becomes clearer with every passing day. Africa's people are rising, and they are not turning back. The ripple effects of Traore's defiance have now reached South Africa, where an extraordinary event unfolded in the mining heartland of Mpumalanga. This time, it wasn't just workers or farmers. It was a coalition of miners, engineers, and even mid-level managers at one of the country's largest platinum mines, standing shoulder to shoulder to demand sovereignty over South Africa's mineral wealth. For decades, South Africa has been one of the world's biggest producers of platinum, gold, and diamonds. Yet, as many know, the profits from these resources have mostly flowed to foreign shareholders and a small local elite, leaving mining towns riddled with poverty, unemployment, and environmental destruction. Last week, however, thousands of miners staged a massive underground sit-in, refusing to come to the surface until their voices were heard. Above ground, their families and entire communities camped at the gates, carrying banners that read, "Our minerals, our future, we are not slaves, and we stand with Traore." One miner, speaking via video from deep inside the shafts, declared, "We watched Captain Ibrahim Traoré stand up and take back Burkina Faso's gold. We watched him tell the French to leave. He gave us hope that Africa can be free. Now it's our turn to say, enough." What makes this story even more remarkable is that it's not only miners who are taking action. Young South African engineers working for the company joined the strike, demanding a shift away from exploitative contracts with foreign companies and toward homegrown, community-driven mining initiatives. Some mid-level managers, often seen as aligned with corporate interests, shocked everyone by walking out in solidarity with the workers. The protests have brought life to mining towns long forgotten by Pretoria, as communities organized food drives, medical tents, and round-the-clock vigils outside the gates. The movement has spread to other provinces too, with miners in Rustenburg and Kimberley announcing their own strikes in support. Political commentators say the movement is a wake-up call, not only for South Africa's government but for the world. For years, the idea of truly nationalizing and equitably sharing the wealth of South Africa's mines was dismissed as impossible. Now, fueled by the Traore effect, It's back at the center of public debate. Asterisk. Even in Parliament, the protests dominated discussion. One young MP stood up and thundered, asterisk. Burkina Faso showed the world that Africans can say no to exploitation. Why are we still selling our gold, platinum, and diamonds for crumbs while our people starve? Traore did. It's so can we. Asterisk, meanwhile, social media platforms lit up with images of miners in their helmets raising fists, with hashtags like hashtag platinum for the people, hashtag Traore effect essay, and hashtag Africa rising trending globally. Asterisk, the mining companies, feeling the pressure, have called for urgent talks and promised to review the structure of profit-sharing agreements. But the miners say they won't settle for token concessions. They want nothing less than systemic change. Asterisk. As the sit-in enters its second week, many across the continent are watching closely. From Ouagadougou to Johannesburg, the message is spreading. Africa's wealth should serve Africa's people. Asterisk, and in the tunnels of Mpumalanga, where miners huddle by the dim light of headlamps, one chant keeps echoing through the shafts. Traore showed us the way. Africa must rise. Asterisk, another chapter has begun, another front in the growing wave of African dignity and resistance. The world is watching, and Africa's people are speaking louder every day. Asterisk.